If we were on a road trip, we did not have some device. Like when they were little, when they were toddlers, we did not have like a device that they were just sitting there staring at. We talked to them. And I know, I know. It's exhausting. It's exhausting being a parent now. You know why? Part of it, why it's exhausting, is because of all these screens. Because people can get at us and talk to us all the time. And so we are overwhelmed by the amount of time we have to spend on screens. And so we tend to give our kids a screen so that they're occupied and we don't have to talk to them and to the people who are talking to us on the screen. I understand. What would you rather? A child who is quiet, you can just sort of put them somewhere and they are self contained, they are self occupied, they are out of your hair, they're quiet. Or a child who's well spoken, a child who can have a conversation with other children, with other adults, even if they even if they're just meeting them for the first time, and do it with ease. Which would you rather? Because your answer to the question is going to determine, it's going to dictate your approach to parenting in some degree. Now, I'm going to start this off by saying I have no problem with screen time. I have no problem. Screens are a part of our lives now. It's unavoidable. I have an iPhone. I have an iPad. My children now have phones. They didn't always, and we can get to that in a moment. So I'm not against technology. I'm not against screens. What I'm inviting you to do is to think about, to be intentional about how you introduce, when you introduce screens to your children and how much access. Because as with anything, when you introduce something new, when there's a new technology, a new whatever, when you introduce something new, there is a trade-off. There is something that you're giving up, even if it's something to make life more convenient, make life easier. There is something that you give up in order to have the new thing. And it's not just giving up something that's a nuisance. Sometimes you're giving up something that is actually useful. And if you're not intentional about what's going on in this transition, you may forfeit, you may give up something that you didn't really even appreciate the importance of until it's gone. So let me give you a little background. I was 32 when Facebook came out. I did not get on Facebook when I was 30. I didn't even know Facebook was out when I was 32. And I tell you why, because it's the exact month and year that my first child was born. He's 21 years old, if you do the math. So not only was I 32 when Facebook came out, it also means I was 35 when the first iPhone came out. So I'm a Gen Xer. I've lived a lot of life without technology in my face all the time, without a phone, a computer in my hand at the ready, without some app to busy my mind and numb me out to what's going on in my own life. I've lived a lot of life. I went to medical school, I did residencies, like I did hard things in life without the latest technology, and certainly not the technology that we have today. So that means I grew up in a time, believe it or not, where there was a corded phone in the home, and that corded phone was in the kitchen. And if you wanted to be on that phone, you had to pull the cord into the bathroom if you wanted to have any privacy while you were on the phone, because there was no phone in a child's bedroom. Your parents had a phone in their room, and there was that phone in the common area of the home, and that was it. I know what that's like. Then I know what it's like to have a cordless phone. And so then I could at least be on the phone in my room. But I'm trying to give you the perspective that sometimes we have to, or it helps us to listen to people who have lived life across a span of technological advances, a span of seasons of technological advance, so that we can understand what things were like and how that might have benefited them, and what we are missing out of if we totally just switch over to whatever the latest and greatest is and forget about what used to be. So if you're Gen Z and you're, for heaven's sake, Gen Alpha doesn't know anything but having a device, if that is what you come from, or you're a millennial who was introduced to having devices, portable devices, very early, then it might seem like, us Gen Xers are just yapping and we're doing too much and we're exaggerating about things and it's not that big of a deal. It's just because you don't have context. And so I make this video because I'm all about helping parents prepare children to then go out into the world and do their thing and contribute positively, we hope. And our job is to equip them to do that and to make available to them things that are latest advances that will help them, but also to measure whether or not these things that are possible, these things are available, are also beneficial. Because not everything that's possible or available is beneficial. And it may not be beneficial right away. It might be something that you introduce later when you consider the maturity of the child, when you consider their personality. And so what I say to you is I was able to, and my husband and I were able to test out technology before we just threw it at our children. Like it wasn't, oh, we now have an iPhone and so they'll be on the iPhone. No, when we finally got an iPhone, they were not touching our iPhone. We were still doing things like, I don't even know if people still do road trips, but if we were on a road trip, we did not have some device. Like when they were little, when they were toddlers, we did not have like a device that they were just sitting there staring at. We talked to them. And I know, I know it's exhausting. It's exhausting being a parent now. You know why? Part of it, why it's exhausting, is because of all these screens, because people can get at us and talk to us all the time. And so we are overwhelmed by the amount of time we have to spend on screens. And so we tend to give our kids a screen so that they're occupied and we don't have to talk to them and to the people who are talking to us on the screen. I understand. If you're enjoying the content, this would be a great time to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. Okay, let's get back to the video. I understand. What I'm suggesting is that we just take a beat and think about what we would rather. We would rather stick a screen in front of them and just have them occupied for as long as we need them out of our hair so that we can do all the other things that we need to do? Or would we rather equip them? Would we rather be uncomfortable sometimes or for a longer amount of time before we introduce a screen and spend the time teaching them how to interact with people? Because unfortunately, that's become a skill that human beings have lost. We have become very equipped at interacting with devices or with people across devices to the detriment of us being able to have conversation with people in person. And I mean positive, healthy, productive conversation. And as I have spent time with young people, I am finding that they have great difficulty holding a conversation. They have great difficulty talking with someone they're just meeting about anything of substance. They feel awkward. Their vocabulary is really limited. They feel distressed doing it. And unfortunately, it can be tied back to how much time do they spend on screens? How much time do they spend just observing other people, just receiving from people that they're not able to directly respond to? I mean, you can leave a comment, you can DM somebody, but you're not talking to them in real time. And you have no guarantee that that person is going to read or care about what you have said and or respond. And by the time they do any of that, the original thing that you consume, the content that you consume, is gone. I'd love to know what you think about that. Let me know in the comments. So they're not learning how to talk to people in real time, like practice conversation, practice the discomfort of somebody saying something to you that you don't agree with, and you in real time having to figure out and develop the skill of responding to that person and sharing that you disagree and sharing it in a way where you learn not to be offensive, but how can I communicate that I disagree and I think this instead? And we just have an exchange rather than I'm on a device, I read a piece of content, I disagree, I think about how I'm going to rant about it, and I do so. I leave a raging comment, and I'm not looking that person in the eye. I have no real apprehension or fear of how this person would respond. Because I'm going to tell you something. I live in Texas. I'm not from Texas. I'm from the Bronx, New York. And so I understand what it is to live somewhere and grow up in a time where you can't just say whatever you want to say to people. Like, you do life with people in, it's real life. You're in their face. You're getting on a subway. You're getting on an overcrowded bus. There are people with all of their smells, all of their attitudes, all of their whatever. They're selling things. It's a very, I grew up in a very, what some would call a confrontational environment, and not confrontational in the sense that somebody's trying to fight you. It's just a lot of friction. Like, there's a lot of people in a small space, square footage is small, and we are coming across each other. There are so many touch points all throughout the day, right? You're on the subway and people are touching you and you don't know them, but we are crammed up in there to touch you. So there's so many opportunities where you have to figure out and you have to learn real quick, or at least then, now everybody's on their phones on the subway, but then you had to figure out um, how to negotiate that, how how to say, that you needed somebody to move without saying move. How to just develop social skills so that you could navigate a very confined environment and learn how to do so and make it home. Because let me tell you, if you say the wrong thing to the wrong person at the wrong time, like, you could catch hands. But when you're on a device, you feel real bold to say whatever you want to say. And because the person is not directly talking to you or talking to your child, there's an automatic distance. And so you feel a certain comfort that, they're talking at me. They're not really talking to me. They're talking at me, all of us who want to pay attention. And I'm sort of, I can just be in my own little world experiencing this content. But you don't know how to behave with people when they're right in front of you and they say something that you may not agree with. Like, how do you handle that? Those are the things that have to be developed and you learn in real time, in real life. But if we allow our kids to spend so much of their real life in virtual spaces, then when it's time for them to deal with people, they are challenged. They are ill equipped. They are super sensitive. They are at a loss for words. They don't really have a vocabulary for how to connect with people because they don't spend a lot of time connecting with people. They spend time connecting with content, and it's not the same because the people that they're receiving this content from, they don't know them. They're not friends with them. They're not really engaged with the person. They're engaged with this thing that a person has carefully crafted and put out to represent them, but it's not really them. You're not really getting to know people. So if your child is spending a lot of time on a screen, they're spending a lot of time consuming but not connecting with real people. And so when they're in classroom situations and they have to actually deal with people, there's sensitivity and um, a lot of rudeness and a lot of impatience that really would not exist if, as young kids, they did a lot of things like, yeah, go to that playground and work it out. Go to the playground and work it out. You and your sibling get in that playroom and work it out. No, nobody's going to be on a device and y'all just sitting on the couch lined up together on a device. No, y'all are going to play with these things. Y'all are going to figure out how to share. You're going to figure out how to negotiate. You're going to figure out how to communicate, how to express yourself, how to, share your point of view. Why do I want this thing? These are all life skills that if we have them on screens from the time they're 6 months old, they don't they don't know that they need that. If you're enjoying the content, this would be a great time to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. But I'm saying the more common that being on devices and the younger children are on devices, the less they are developing life skills that they need when they must interact with people, when they must interact with their boss, when they must interact with their teachers and or professors if they go to college, when they must interact with their spouse, when they must interact with the stranger at the DMV or the stranger at the store. They have to have certain skills to interact with people and enough vocabulary to even hold a conversation and to have the conversation with confidence. That is the challenge that is happening now. Is there's no confidence when children have a conversation because the give and take, the awkwardness of saying something and somebody in your face not receiving it the way you want to. It's one thing when you put out a piece of content and you post something and people, like it, or they might put a fire emoji. That's one thing. It's one thing even if they might leave an unpleasant comment. It's it's a thing. That comment is a thing on a device. It's very different when you risk having conversation with people and you have to either see on their face that they think what you just said is crazy or they don't agree. And then they say to you in your face that they don't agree. You have to develop the skill of being able to stand your ground on what you said or be curious about why they feel the way they do and consider what they think differently. There's a certain bravery that happens in in-person conversation that will not and cannot happen over a device. And so there's a depth of compassion, a depth of consideration that develops with other people, that you develop and that your child will develop for other people when they actually spend time doing the work of in-person communication, in-person conversation. And you have to make room for that. If they're always on a device, you are by default stating that there's no room for conversation. There's no room for their thoughts. There's no room for them to share those thoughts. There's no room for them to consider other people's thoughts that are right there with them. That what's more important is just consuming what somebody over there is saying. Someone who does not know them, doesn't really care about them, is just wanting to talk about themselves. That's another thing. Well spoken people, it's not just about having a certain vocabulary, and it's not also about just being confident in sharing your vocabulary. Well spoken people can hear other people, can they care about what the person is saying that they're speaking with, and then can respond to that in real time. When you're on a device all the time, you develop the habit of, okay, I heard it here, and I can respond to it by typing, which is not the same as talking to the person because again, you are hidden. Their content is out there, but both of you are hidden, so you're just talking at each other. But then you're also there's something to be said for showing interest in what the other person said and answering it in real time, having a quicker answer, having a ready answer, and you only get better at conversation the more you have conversation. And so, I would like you to consider if you are creating an environment for your younger children, especially, to develop conversation before they are stripped of that by spending so much time on a screen. There's a time for everything. There's a time when you have things you need to do, you have a deadline, your child doesn't have anything to do right now or anyone else to occupy them. And so you put something on that they can play or learn from, preferably. There's a time for that. But I invite you to look at how much time they're spending on a screen versus how much time you are actually talking with them. Because I know what you're going to say. Dr. Vanessa, they go to school and they're talking to their peers at school and they're talking to the teacher at school. First of all, I shudder to think what they're talking about with their peers at school because, okay. But there's no replacement for you. You are their first teacher before you ever sent them to daycare, ever sent them to elementary school, and so on and so forth. You are their first teacher. Don't delegate the influence that you naturally have as their parent to other people and their voices and their pieces of content and their narratives. I invite you to always make time and to guard the influence that you have. Guard it for as long as possible. There is a lot of growth that happens between birth and 3 years of age, and really up to 5 years of age. There is a lot that kids are absorbing. I would suggest to you that most of what they should be absorbing should be coming from you. It should be you patterning for them conversation, you patterning for them that part of valuing people is spending time with them. Part of valuing people is sharing yourself by sharing your perspective, and you value them by letting them share theirs. And the discussion that you have about what each other thinks, believes, feels, that there is value in that. and that cannot and should not be replaced by spending a lot of time with an inanimate object where people are communicating with you mostly one way. When you think about the amount of time your child is receiving from someone versus the little bit of time that it takes to click like, that it takes to put an emoji, that it takes to say a couple of words, they are receiving from random people a lot more than they are giving. And what is the quality of that language? Are they learning words that are useful? Are they learning words that will bring them into a variety of rooms where they have verbiage, where they have language to be able to use, whether they are in the classroom, whether they have to go for a job interview, whether they are interning in an office? Are they able to show up in a variety of situations and be well versed and be comfortable speaking in front of and to people, because that has been part of their upbringing. That has been part of what has been prioritized, as opposed to, I want you to be quiet and I want you to be in this corner and here, just look at this screen. We need to teach our children to be verbal. We need to teach our children to be confident in their voice. The voice is part of their power. Expression is part of their power. And children who are taught early to be silent, to just stare and be silent, they will be less confident in speaking up for themselves. They will be less confident in sharing their thoughts. They'll be less confident in disagreeing with peers who want them to do something else. They will feel like, well, let me just go ahead and do it, because they've spent their lives looking on a screen, just looking in the comments to see what everybody else is saying and commenting likewise. And if they comment different, it's only to be an instigator. It's only to be contrary. It's only to be hostile, as opposed to having something positive and productive to contribute to conversation, so that when the two of us come away from each other, we are better for having interacted with each other than before we got together. So I just invite you to think about that, because I think it's very easy when you have grown up with something that's been very accessible, and it was accessible for as long as you can remember. It's all you know. And as far as you're concerned, there's nothing wrong with it. You don't see any downside to it. But there's always two sides of a coin. There's a saying that says, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, which is not really true. What might be good for you may not be good for your child. And I just encourage you to just step back and think about and observe, like observe your child, observe their confidence level, observe how freely they feel comfortable speaking, especially if you introduce them to someone new. How comfortable are they holding a conversation? Now, I'm not saying that my children are best buddies right away with somebody that they meet. That'd be weird. But I'm saying when they meet someone, they don't feel awkward. Like, hi, nice to meet you. My name is so and so. And, they look them in the eye. They ask questions. If the person asks them questions, they feel comfortable answering. They smile. They can laugh. They don't have their head down. They're not fidgety. They're not looking around, like one, feeling awkward and wanting to get out of there so that they could run with their device and go sit down and just be quiet. They're able to engage with people, and that's intentional. And so I'm not one for throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Technology is here. We need to make use of it. It has its upsides and it has its downsides. And for the things that are a downside, I invite you to be intentional about how you want to mitigate that. What do you want to put in place that sort of goes against or buffets the things that are the downsides of too much time on screens? And protecting our child's voice and giving them the sense that what they have to say matters, and making room for that. Um, another thing, another way that I can suggest to you that's practical is when you guys eat together, and I hope that that's something that you do. Table time is a big thing in my house. No, not all the meals, not every day, because life is life, and we are all doing different things. My children are now young adults, and my youngest is a 15-year-old. So we have different things going on, but as much as possible, we have time together at the table. And when we're at the table, there are no devices. That time at the table is for us to have conversation. It's for us to share what's going on with each of us, what we have noticed, what we're excited about, what ticked us off that day, what we're curious about, what we're confused about. It's for us to have conversation. We make room for hearing and being heard by each other. And we are practicing conversation. We are practicing conversation with the safest people that we know so that when we go into the world and we have to interact with strangers, there's a level of confidence that we can approach those conversations with because we have been heard. We have been heard by people that we can look in the eye, by people who care about us, who have made room for us and want to hear from us. They're not just talking at us from a distance, throwing content and going about their business. They have stuck around to hear our response. They've stuck around to respond to our response so that when we go out into the world, we are the better for it. And so that when my children go for interviews and when they, apply for this or apply for that, or they meet other people's parents, they do so confidently. Because I've been talking to they're like, I've been talking to grown folk all my life. I'm not just on a screen. I've been talking to people all of my life. And yes, screens were introduced later than they would have liked, later than their friends thought was cool. But whether or not my kids' friends think that what I do is cool is not my concern. My concern is preparing my children for the real world. And the real world is not on that phone, it's not on that iPad. The real world is where your feet take you, the people that you are brought in front of, and are they going to be prepared as best as possible to interact with those people, to listen to them, and to have confidence that they are going to be heard by them because they are confident in their expression. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to hear more from me, I invite you to subscribe. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments on your perspective. This is not me telling you how to parent. This is me encouraging you to think about something that might not have occurred to you, that might shift or shape or somehow impact how you approach parenthood, because I want all parents to win and for their children to flourish. So until next time, when it comes to you being the mother of your children, you are the woman for the job. Take care.